Hello everybody, welcome to the video of the guide teaching how to unlock Foundry on normal and heroic difficulty. As always, this is Draven Rennick from the US Argera server, bringing you some recommendations for Blast Furnace. Today's spec will be Demonology. This guide aims to cover the talents, both offensive and defensive, the glyphs, both offensive and defensive, useful add-ons, Warlock specific tips as they relate to the mechanics, the opener, general DPS knowledge, the final 25% of the fight, and Warlock specific tips to boost your DPS. If you'd like to skip to any particular portion of the video, feel free to click on any of the annotations you see on the screen right now. With that said, let's get started. Taking a look at the talents. As far as offensive talents go, this fight can really come down to what your group needs the most, and whether or not this is a farm content boss. Both Cataclysm with Grimoire Synergy and Demonic Servitude with Grimoire Service are viable on this fight, and they can both be decently competitive with each other, with Cataclysm coming out slightly ahead. If this is a farm boss, and there is no immediate threat of not killing the Primal Elementalist in time, then by all means take Cataclysm and cleave away. However, if this is a progression fight, or your group simply lacks the single target DPS needed to burn the Primal Elementalist, then you should look to take Demonic Servitude. As far as defensive talents go, you can effectively argue in favor of either taking the on-use defensives, being Sacrificial Pact and Unending Resolve unglyphed, or taking the collective passive 30% damage reduction. The pros to the on-use defensive is that it gives you some control in case you accidentally get hit by something you shouldn't have. There is a lot of fire on the ground in this fight. However, I'd advocate taking the passive 30% damage reduction since there is a consistent flow of damage going out on the fight. As such, you should look to take Soul Leech and Soul Link. Moving on to glyphs. As far as defensive glyphs go, the only thing of particular note is Glyph of Unending Resolve. Combined with Soul Link, this will give you a collective passive 30% damage reduction, a strong choice with a fight with such consistent damage output. Now, as far as offensive glyphs go, you might strongly consider picking up Glyph of Dark Soul. This glyph is going to reduce the duration of Dark Soul from 20 seconds to 10 seconds, but in turn reduce the cooldown from 2 minutes to 1 minute. Personally, I prefer using this glyph so I can get more buffed Chaos Waves out, as well as Cataclysm, without being stressed that Dark Soul will be on cooldown if I were to accidentally waste the charge. Now more importantly, with proper timing, you can ensure that every Primal Elementalist gets at least 10 seconds of Dark Soul Soulfire burn. Just forego casting Chaos Wave and throw out a few more Handle Dams to generate Molten Core charges. That said, you should take Glyph of Life Tap to keep as little stress on your healers as possible, Glyph of Hellstone, since there's really no large spikes in damage on this fight, and Glyph of Dark Soul to properly burn down the adds. As far as useful add-ons go, for this fight there's really nothing particularly notable, so I wouldn't worry about it. Taking a look at Warlock specific tips regarding mechanics. This fight can be fairly movement heavy depending on your luck. As such, Demonology is very well suited to handle these periods. Use Demonic Leap or Demonic Gateway to quickly traverse the room and escape environmental threats, bring bombs to the furnace, take a Slag Elemental to the next Primal Elementalist, or get away from the group for Rupture or Melt. Moving on to the opener. If you're using Cataclysm, make sure you do the following. Begin by pre-potting and pre-casting Soulfire at Form and Feldspar, when your group's pull counter gets to 5 seconds. Follow that up by casting Corruption on Feldspar once combat begins. Now, begin running to whichever side you've been assigned to while throwing Corruption on everything you can. Once the adds are stacked on top of the Bellows Operator, pop all your cooldowns, go into meta and drop a Cataclysm underneath the group. Manually make your Felguard cast Fellstorm, and follow that up with as many Chaos Waves as you can before single targeting the highest priority target, usually the Bellows Operator and the Engineers. Now, if you're using Demonic Servitude, instead you'll want to make sure you do the following. Begin by pre-potting and pre-casting Soulfire at Form and Feldspar, when your group's pull counter gets to 5 seconds. Follow that up by casting Corruption on Feldspar once combat begins. Now begin running to whichever side you've been assigned to while throwing Corruption on everything you can and casting your Grimoire Doomguard. Once the adds are stacked on top of the Bellows Operator, pop all your cooldowns, go into meta and cast 2 Chaos Waves on the group of adds, and follow it up by throwing Doom on Feldspar and any other add you feel may live for longer than 15 seconds. This is oftentimes the security guard. Now continue about by single targeting the highest priority target, again usually the bellows operator and the engineers. As for general DPS knowledge, regardless of which talent setup you're playing, the biggest DPS boost you'll have is pulling Handful Dan or Chaos Wave charges and dumping them into the biggest group of adds. Now, this is absolutely 100% padding, and is oftentimes looked down upon. However, it doesn't change the fact that it's the single biggest thing you can do to boost your DPS. Now, more importantly and more practically, you should be looking to pull your Molten Core procs for when you have Dark Soul available, and you can dump them into an exposed Primal Elementalist. This is functional DPS that is going to do much more for your group than simply AoE padding off the adds. With that said, if you notice that you're going to cap your Demonic Fury or your Molten Core procs, just make sure to jump into meta and dump some of your Fury on either excess Molten Core procs if you have more than 6 or 7, or on Chaos Wave. Additionally, make sure you maintain your Doom and Corruption on as many adds as possible at all times. Lastly, use the period of time when the adds are below 25% health as a great way to generate free Fury by spamming Soulfire on them. This brings us to the final 25% of the fight. The final 25% of the fight becomes very straightforward. Continuously spam Soulfire on the boss, while maintaining as many Doom and Corruption debuffs as you can on the nearby Slag Elementals. Make sure you use your second potion when you have Dark Soul active. If you won't have Dark Soul active for the remainder of the fight, try to line your second potion up with your strongest DPS procs. Also, do your best to save your summoned Doomguard or your Grimoire Doomguard for this period as they both deal 20% increased damage to targets below 20% health. Make sure you stay out of melt, and continually run it to its designated place. Finally, we look at Warlock specific tips to boost your DPS. There are a number of things you can do as a Warlock on this fight to significantly improve your DPS. The most vital thing is to maximize your target hit by both Cataclysm and Chaos Wave, especially when they're buffed by Dark Soul and Trinket procs. But as mentioned, that's basically just padding. Secondly, you can ensure that you have both Doom and Corruption active on as many adds as possible at all times. The increased number of Corruption debuffs offers more opportunity to cast Handful Dan / Chaos Wave. Now, if your group struggles to down the Primal Elementalist in time, make sure you've saved up some Molten Core procs. Using Handful Dan on a decently sized group of adds can make this very easy, and dump those casts into the add, thus increasing the damage output that matters the most. Well, that concludes this guide to Normal and Heroic Blast Furnace. Thanks for watching. If there's a particular fight in BRF you'd like to see next, let me know by leaving a comment below. I'll see you all in the next video.